Welcome to my classroom. In this chemical process calculation course, particularly in this model, we are discussing about energy balance in unit operations. So in the previous lecture, we have solved some numericals on evaporator unit operation. In this lecture, we are going to discuss about crystallization and distillation. Crystallization and distillation are two important unit operations widely used in industries. So we should know how to do energy balance in these crystallization and distillation operations. Okay, so both are unit operation. There is no process involved in it. There is no chemical reaction is involved in it. So that's why energy balance in crystallization is what we are going to discuss. To start with, already during our second model where we have discussed about material balance in crystallization, we have seen what is a crystallization, how crystallization takes place. Right, so what are the total number of input, what is the total number of output we have seen, right? So we'll just recall that and we will proceed to do the energy balance. Okay, how crystallization takes place in a liquid? We have seen that when the solute concentration is exceeding its solubility, then crystallization will take place. So how to bring in this change in the system? So that is how to bring in supersaturation in a liquid so that crystallization will occur. So it can be done in various methods. Say for example, if solubility is a function of temperature, that is if it is increasing with increasing temperature, in those cases by cooling the liquid, that is by reducing the temperature of the liquid, we can bring in supersaturation. So the first method is by cooling the liquid solution so that crystallization will occur. So supersaturation can be brought by reducing the temperature of the liquid. That is one method. So most of the inorganic salts are done in that way. Okay, inorganic salts and organic substances can be crystallized out by reducing the temperature. So cooling is one of the means of bringing in supersaturation. What is the other way? We have seen that from brine water, how NaCl, sodium common salt, is being separated out. So we are evaporating the water in the sunlight. So thereby, so evaporation is one method of bringing in supersaturation. What we are doing? So we are liquid contains solute and solvent. So what we can do is by reducing the solvent content in the liquid, we can bring in the supersaturation. So that way, evaporation of the solvent from a liquid also one way of bringing in the supersaturation. Okay, so there is another method called precipitative method. So what do you mean by precipitative method? Is precipitation by chemical reaction. Precipitation in the sense what we add a third component. We are adding a third component which will react with the solute and form a substance which is insoluble in the solvent. Okay, what we are doing? We are adding a third component which will react to form some compound. So that compound is insoluble in this liquid, so it will precipitate out. So this is called precipitation by chemical reaction method. So a third component is added which reacts with the solute and it is insoluble in the solvent. That's why it precipitates out. Okay, that is one method. There is another method called by adding a solvent. When we add a solvent, another solvent, when we are adding a third solvent, what happens? The solvent will mix with the existing solvent and forms a new mixture, which forms a mixture which has very less solubility for the solute in the solution. What I am saying? In this method, we add a third solvent. Okay, so we are adding additional solvent to it. That is different from what is the existing solvent. So these two solvents will mix together to form a new solvent which will have very low solubility for the solute. So by this method also we can bring in supersaturation in the liquid. Okay, so four methods I have told. One is reducing the temperature by cooling. Number two, by evaporating the solvent. Number three, by adding a new solvent which will form a new mixed solvent which will have very low solubility for the solute. So thereby supersaturation can be obtained. Fourth method I told is about precipitation by chemical reaction. We had a third component which will react with the solute and that newly formed product will have very low solubility in the given solvent, hence it precipitates out. Okay, so that is the way this crystallization will be affected by bringing in the supersaturation in the liquid. Okay, But what happens during this crystallization is, what is the mechanism taking place during the crystallization? If you look at it, there are two, it happens by two stages. Number one is about nucleation. Number one is about nucleation, that is the formation of crystal particles, first of all. That is first step. And once these crystal particles are formed, then crystal growth will occur. So their first step is nucleation, second step is crystal growth. So crystal growth is just secondary thing. Okay, once the crystals are formed, it is like layer by layer attachment of the new crystal molecules onto it. Okay, so that way crystal growth will happen following the geometric principles. Okay, geometric similarity will be there. Delta L law is governing that how this crystal growth will take place. But when if you look at focus on this first part, what is that? Nucleation. Okay, during this nucleation, what is happening? This nucleation can be of two types. One is primary nucleation, and second one is secondary nucleation. So nucleation can be further divided into primary nucleation and secondary nucleation. So we should look into this, what is happening in the primary nucleation and what's happening in the secondary nucleation. Okay, if you look at what is primary nucleation, this primary nucleation is indigenously that is taking place, that is there is no crystal already present in the system. In that case, these molecules present in that solute molecules present in the system, when you have reached a high degree of supersaturation, what happens? This crystal these molecules of the solute will clog together, agglomerate together to form this particle will form a cluster. First of all, all these particles will form a cluster. These clusters will together form an embryo. Okay, so this is, till then it is not a crystal. Okay, even though there is this group of particles staying together. Okay, so that is called clusters. When several clusters together are called embryo. Okay, so this embryo is further taking time. What happens? It will become a crystal. This embryo is again equilibrium state, where it can go further to form a crystal, or it can again dissociate into particles, that is it can again get dissolved. So till that state it is called only embryo. So what I said, so we have particles, a group of particles together meet each other, so that way it is called clusters. So when several clusters together, they are called embryo. So they reach a state, certain stage, like the water molecule, less water, more solute are there in the cluster or in embryos. But embryo is again an unstable condition. But that's why up to embryo, that embryo can further proceed to form crystal lattices and get into form a crystal, or this embryo can dissociate itself and the particles can dissolve in the liquid. So that way embryo is a critical position, okay, critical condition. Further it forms the crystals. Okay, this mainly happens in the case of this kind of primary nucleation takes place when we are having the precipitation method of supersaturation, bringing in the supersaturation. What is precipitation method? Where we add a chemical, a third component, which will react with the solute to form an insoluble product. So that product will precipitate out, right? So in those cases, this type of primary nucleation will take place. Primary nucleation is in the sense there is no crystals already present in the system for the growth. Okay, so these particles themselves together form a clusters further get reduced, closely come in contact to form embryo. So this embryo further proceeds to form the crystal lattice. Okay, this primary nucleation will take place when it will take place when you have high degree of supersaturation. When you have high degree of supersaturation, and when this nucleation is uninfluenced by the foreign particles present in it, impurities present in it, or the walls of the container. In those cases, this primary nucleation can be homogeneous nucleation, or it can be heterogeneous nucleation also. Okay, so homogeneous nucleation in the sense, so here there is no influence of concentration of other particles present in it, and there is no influence of container wall or impeller blade or anything, any solid surface. If the nucleation is not influenced, in this case it is called homogeneous nucleation, and if it is influenced, it is called heterogeneous nucleation. So overall, this primary nucleation is preferred way of forming the crystal growth when the precipitation method of supersaturation is taking place. Okay, these particles together form clusters, clusters together further form embryo. So the embryo further forms crystal nucleus. Okay, that's called nucleation. So this crystal nucleus is what? It is the smallest entity which will further proceed to form crystal. Okay, so this crystal nucleus is the smallest entity in the crystallization process, which will proceed, which will not dissociate, but it will further proceed to form crystals. Whereas what happens with embryo? Embryo can further proceed to form crystal nucleus, otherwise it can dissociate into particles again, right? Okay, having seen what is primary nucleation, now we should able to explain what is secondary nucleation. Secondary nucleation refers to nucleation taking place in presence of some of the crystal present already in the system. Okay, I'll repeat again. It is attributed to the influence of the crystals already present in the magma. What is magma? It is a mixture of mother liquor, summation of mother liquor plus crystal is equal to magma, right? So the magma is there. When magma is there, the secondary nucleation will take place. The secondary nucleation will take place when in magma you have already crystals present in it. So this crystal growth is crystal nucleation is attributed to the crystals already present in the magma. Okay, so it is either caused by, how it is caused? You have already crystal present in it. So whatever is the force created, because by mass transfer these solute molecules coming towards the surface of the already present crystal, so they get absorbed, then it gets attached into the crystal lattice. Slowly the crystal, the particles in the from the bulk of the liquid, from the liquid will reach the surface, it gets absorbed onto the surface, and then it gets attached into the crystal lattice. That way this crystal growth will take place. Such growth is called as secondary nucleation. Okay, but industrially, if not precipitation is involved, this secondary nucleation is preferred method, where we purposefully, because we recycle some amount of the crystal into the system. All time some amount of crystal is present in the magma within the system, so that crystal growth will occur quickly. So for industrial processes, the secondary method of nucleation, the secondary nucleation is a preferred method if we are not considering the precipitation method of bringing in the supersaturation. So if you are not using this precipitation method of supersaturation, then the secondary nucleation method is the most widely used process for your industrial operations of crystallization. Okay, so this crystal growth will occur on the surface of the crystal surfaces. Each phase it will be, growth rate will be the same. Okay, whatever may be the length or diameter, whatever. So each phase, if you consider each phase, in all the phases the rate at which the crystal growth is taking place will be uniform. Okay, so this, it is called actually invariant crystal. In ideal conditions we will get invariant crystals. Invariant crystal refers to geometrically similar ratio it will grow. Okay, so whatever, there are three sides. If you consider a triangle shaped one or cubical shaped, there are 6 faces in a cube. In each face, if you at the time t equal to the length, the thickness is t1, time t1 thickness is t1, at time t2 thickness is going to t2. So what is t2 minus t1? It is going to be the same for all the sides. That's what, that is called invariant crystal, and it is governed by delta L law. Delta L law. Okay, so this delta L law says that the rate of growth is equal to, if we mention it by G, it's equal to delta L by delta T, change in length by change in time. This ratio will be constant in all the sides. Okay. Having seen that there are two steps involved in this crystallization process, where primary nucleation and secondary nucleation taking place, where primary nucleation can take place by homogeneous nucleation or heterogeneous nucleation. And we have seen that this primary nucleation mainly takes place in the case of precipitation method of supersaturation, whereas for industrial processes, the secondary nucleation is widely used, and we have seen what is crystal growth. It is crystal. So once this nucleation takes place, second part is crystal growth. How the crystal growth will take place is follows the delta L law. What is delta L law? I have told you about invariant. I have told you about invariant crystal growth, or you can say it is a invariant crystal. When we can call it as a invariant crystal is when the characteristic length L equal to 6 times volume by surface area. So this invariant crystals will have this property. This characteristic length is given by the characteristic length of a invariant crystal is given by 6 times volume by area. Okay, surface area it is. Okay, total surface area available, and it is the volume of the crystal. So the crystal can have different shapes, right? So we should go through the shapes, different shapes available. And before that, if look at the important factors that are to be considered in a crystallization process are yield. So how much crystals can be produced for the given amount of feed. Okay, so what is the purity of the crystal, whether any foreign particles are present in it or not. In general, mostly crystals are pure in nature. Okay, until unless some impurities are purposefully allowed to form along with the thing. Okay, so then what about the size of the crystal? It's going to be uniform. Okay, because what we want, say we want to produce something, we want all the products to be uniform in shape, right? So if you want to make sugar crystal itself, so all should be in equal size of cube. One cannot be big cube, one cannot be small cube, right? So we want all to be uniform. That is the desired properties. And also the shape of the crystal also what we want. Whether if you look at the different types of crystal geometry, so this crystal geometry can be cubic system, it can be tetragonal, it can be orthorhombic, it can be monolithic, monoclinic, or it can be triclinic, or it can be trigonal, right? So the various types of crystal growths are possible. Whatever, depending upon that, whatever we want, that kind of shapes is preferred. Okay, so what is magma? We have seen. So magma is the two-phase mixture of mother liquor plus crystals of all sizes, which occupies the crystallizer, and it is withdrawn as the product. Mother liquor is so magma is nothing but mother liquor with crystals. If it is taken out as the product, that is called magma. This characteristic length. What is characteristic length? I just told L equal to 6 times volume by total surface area. Okay, volume of crystal, total surface area. If I say rate, after defining what is L, you can say what is delta L. Rate of growth, let it be G. Rate of growth is going to be equal to delta L by delta T. It is going to be constant with respect to time. Change in length by change in time is constant, which I have explained for some time back also. Okay, so if we are looking to design, if you are looking to design in crystallizer, so various methods are used. If you are looking to design crystallizers, various methods are used. So one of the method is using calculating the what is the sensible heat required for cooling or heating, right? Because we have a feed at a different temperature, it is being reduced, right? We have seen that it can be done, right? Cooling can be done or heating can be done. Okay, to evaporate the thing, it may be sensible heat for heating or cooling. By changing the temperature, which can be sensed, is sensible heat we have defined. Okay, so we have to consider the sensible heats. We have to consider the latent heat of. Also, if we consider the heat of crystallization. So this is heat of crystallization. It is latent heat of vaporization. If vaporization of solvents are taking place, we can call it like latent heat of vaporization. Okay. So we can say A, latent heat of vaporization, B, sensible heat, and C, heat of crystallization. So if you are considering A, B, and C, we can we can get an equation. We can form an equation for total heat effects. Okay, total heat effects. For total heat effects by using A, B, and C. By considering A, B, and C, what is A, B, and C? Sensible heat of cooling or heating, latent heat of vaporization, or and heat of crystallization. If you consider this, we can form an equation and which can be solved to get the required parameter, unknown parameter. Okay, so another method is enthalpy balance. What is enthalpy balance method? It can be, you can write the total enthalpy of the leaving stream minus total enthalpy of the all the thing that is entering is equal to heat absorbed from the external sources by the system. So that is enthalpy balance method. Okay, you can write total enthalpy of all leaving streams means output streams. Total enthalpy of all leaving streams minus total enthalpy of, I'll just write E, total enthalpy of all entering streams is equal to heat absorbed by the system. Heat absorbed by the system. Okay. Now, here we are going to make an important observation, that is at equilibrium conditions, what is heat of crystallization? This heat of crystallization will be opposite in sign and it will be equal to the heat of solution. Heat of the solution at infinite concentration. Heat of the solution at infinite concentration is equal and opposite to this heat of crystallization. So this, if you remember, at equilibrium conditions, heat of crystallization is minus of heat of solution at infinite concentration, because we remember it is the, if you say solution, mostly we consider it to be infinite concentration, that is very light concentration of the solute, so that way this is equal. Okay. So what we will do now is we will solve the problem, so that where we are using it, I will again reiterate it. Okay, so we will start solving the problems. So before solving the problems, I just wanted to tell you that this name will be widely coming into our picture, Swenson-Walker crystallizer. I just wanted to show you how to visualize a crystallizer. Okay. So this is the picture of Swenson-Walker crystallizer, because in all the numerical it will be mentioned a Swenson-Walker crystallizer is used, right? So that time you should be able to visualize how it looks like. Okay, and this is a photograph of this Swenson-Walker crystallizer. Okay, so and also in these crystallizers, I told you that we will be using the Q equal to UA delta T logarithmic mean if it is heat exchangers are used. So what is delta TLM? I told you in the previous lecture also. Delta T logarithmic is equal to delta T1 minus delta T2 by ln of delta T1 by delta T2, where delta T1 is this condition. What is delta T1 here? Here delta T1 is equal to TH1 minus TC1. Delta T2 is equal to TH2 minus TC2, where H refers to hot fluid and C refers to cold fluid, that is coolant. Okay, it means in heat exchangers we will have we have hot fluid moving, and externally we will be sending cold fluid. Okay, so hot fluid will give up the heat to the cooling liquid. So cooling liquid will enter with low temperature and leaves at high temperature, whereas hot fluid will get reduced in its temperature. So that's why you can see hot liquid entering with higher temperature, and along the flow, means along the length of the pipe, it will get reduced to temperature TH2. That's why it is, TH2 is less than TH1. What happens to the cold fluid? It enters with low temperature TC1 and it gets heated, because the heat is transferred from hot fluid to low this cold fluid, so its temperature will rise to TC2. So this delta T1 is this temperature difference, TH1 minus TC1, TH2 minus TC2 for a parallel flow. Whereas in case of a counter flow, what happened? They come in contact with each other in opposite direction. So we are considering here in this case, hot fluid is in this direction. Here cold fluid is going in this direction. So that way cold fluid is entrance, it is low temperature. When it is exiting, it is at high temperature. That's cold fluid gets heated up because this hot fluid is transferring its heat to it. Okay. And when the hot fluid is entering, it is at high temperature. And when it is leaving this tube, it is at lower temperature TH1. So what is delta T1 here? In this case, delta T1 is TH1 minus TC1, and delta T2 is equal to TH2 minus TC2. So this is very important to determine this delta TLM. Okay, so this second part, that is only heat transfer required area, or you are asked to find the area is given, what is U, like that numericals can be done. So mostly we will be finding what is overall heat transfer coefficient with when area is given, or what is the area when overall heat transfer coefficient is given. Okay, because Q is what we are going to do from our get from our energy balance. Okay, so that's the same diagram I shown for you to understand it better. So LMTD refers to logarithmic mean temperature difference. Logarithmic mean temperature difference at the inlet and exit conditions. Okay, so before proceeding to solve some of the numericals, we should recall what is the atomic mass of the some of the compound, because we are going to concern mainly, if you look at throughout the courses, we are going to come across some of the crystals like KCl, NaCl, okay, and ferrous sulfate, magnesium sulfate, sodium sulfate, sodium phosphate, all hydrates. Hydrates means it will contain some amount of moisture in it, right? So this can be, for example, you can see here KCl, NaCl, FeSO4, 7H2O. So it refers to there are 7 water molecules present in each FeSO4 crystal. So these are all some of the crystals formed. Magnesium sulfate 7H2O, sodium sulfate 10H2O, Na3PO4, sodium phosphate 12H2O. So these are examples for crystals. Okay. Okay. So these are some of the examples for hydrated crystals. Okay, so if you look at the, you recall what are the atomic masses of iron? It is 55.8. This we should know, because we cannot, if you cannot remember this, at least we should know these atomic masses, so that we will be able to calculate the molecular weight of these compounds. Okay, so if iron, it has 55.8 gram per gram atom, magnesium 24.3 gram per gram atom or gram moles, potassium 29.1, sodium 23, sulfur 32.1. So these are mainly used in this problem. That's why I given you here, so that we can calculate the molecular, what is the molecular weight of KCl, what is the molecular weight of NaCl, calculate the molecular weight of this FeSO4, MgSO4, Na2SO4, Na3PO4, and or how to calculate the molecular weight of these hydrated salts. So if you are having hydrate, so we know each water molecule will have 18 gram per gram mole. So if in this, let me say in this 10H2O is there, so we have to use 10 times 18, that is 180 gram per gram mole added to the molecular weight of this Na2SO4. So once you calculate this as A and let it be B, so the molecular weight of this is A plus B. What is that A? Na2SO4. Molecular weight of Na2SO4 plus 10 times molecular weight of water, which is 180. So this gives us the molecular weight of hydrated crystal. So all the hydrated crystals, so molecular weight is going to be, for example, FeSO4 7H2O. So in that case, it is going to be A plus C. Differentiate it. A dash, A double dash. A dash is the molecular weight of FeSO4. Then we have 7H2O, it's answer 26, 126, correct. Okay, so that way we should be able to calculating the molecular weight. Recall, this is from module 1. Okay, so from module 1 we should able to determine the molecular weight of each compounds like iron sulfate, magnesium sulfate, sodium sulfate, sodium phosphate, also for these hydrated crystals. Okay, so hydrated crystals, molecular weight of its whatever is the compound solute plus the moisture associated with it. Okay, so the water molecules associated with it. Okay, so if you take down this problem, we'll solve this problem. FeSO4 7H2O crystals are produced in a Swenson-Walker crystallizer. That's why I showed you the photograph of this. You can see that Swenson-Walker crystallizer is the widely industrially available one. Okay, so that we can say that FeSO4 7H2O crystals are produced in a Swenson-Walker crystallizer by cooling the saturated solution at 323 Kelvin from solution from 323 Kelvin to 303 Kelvin. Okay, that is feed is entering at 323, it is cooled to 303 Kelvin, and solubility data are given. Solubility are 48 parts and 32.9 parts of FeSO4 per 100 parts of the free water at 323 Kelvin and 303 Kelvin respectively. So at the entering condition and at the leaving condition, that is the higher temperature and lower temperature, both solubilities are given. Okay, why this solubility is given? It is given to find out the your mass fractions. Okay, then feed solution as an average specific heat. Cp mean of Cp average of the feed is given as 2.93 kilojoule per kg Kelvin. Heat of solution of FeSO4 7H2O at 303 Kelvin is given. Heat of the solution is given. Why this heat of the solution is given? I told you that we have to follow that one. That is heat of crystallization is equal to heat of crystallization is equal to minus of heat of the solution multiplied by, remember what is the unit of it? It is per kilojoule per mole, multiply by C moles. Okay, so then only moles get cancelled, you will get kilojoules per hour. Okay, whatever. So heat of crystallization is minus of heat of solution into C. Okay, this minor represent this whatever is the heat of the solution is used to for heat of crystallization. Okay. The question here is how much heat is evolved during the process per kg of FeSO4 7H2O. Okay. How much? Question here is per kg of FeSO4 formation, how much heat is evolved. So now we have the clue for what should be our basis. Okay. Now we will proceed to solve the problem. Okay, we go through it again. Ferrous sulfate 7H2O crystals are produced in Swenson-Walker crystallizer by cooling the saturated solution from 323 Kelvin to 303 Kelvin. Solubility data are given 48 parts and 32.9 parts of FeSO4 per 100 parts of free water at 323 Kelvin and 303 Kelvin respectively. The Cp value of the feed solution is given. Heat of the solution is given. Per kg of FeSO4 7H2O crystal formation, how much heat is evolved. So in this, we are not proceeding to find out what is heat transfer area or what is heat transfer coefficient, right? So we are just stopping where we'll just stop where we find the how much heat is evolved in this system. Okay. So let us write the given data. So it is given that what is that? What is happening? Let me draw a crystallizer. So in this crystallizer, we have feed, right? So we have mother liquor, we have crystal formation. So it is cooling, there is no evaporation. Okay, no evaporation is taking place, or it can say negligible. Okay, so in this, what is happening? So here, let me tell. Supersaturation is obtained by cooling it from initial temperature of 323 Kelvin to 323 Kelvin to 303 Kelvin. Okay, so it is cooled from this temperature to this temperature. That is Initial temperature is 323 Kelvin. Final temperature is 303 Kelvin. Let me say Ti equal to 323 Kelvin T output, because when it is cooled to 303, these both are going to leave at output temperatures are 303 Kelvin. That we should understand. Yeah, whatever is the operating condition, the product is formed at 303, so this will leave at the temperature of this 303 Kelvin only. Okay, that's why T output is 303 Kelvin. The feed is entering at 323 Kelvin. Okay, and what is the feed solubility is given. Okay, so at 323 Kelvin, solubility is given as 48 parts per 100 parts of water. So that way I can calculate XF. That is the reason I am writing. What is the solubility? What is the mole fraction of FeSO4 in feed? So that will be given by solubility data only, right? So solubility at 323 Kelvin is given as 48 parts per 100 parts of water. Okay. Similarly, solubility at 303 Kelvin is given. 303 Kelvin is given as 32.9 parts per 100 parts of water. So these are the given data. Okay, and Cp average of the feed is given. Cp average of the feed is given as 2.93 kilojoule per kg Kelvin. Okay, Cp average is given. Heat of solution is given. Okay, I have written. Heat of solution is equal to 18.4 kilojoule per moles. Okay, so we are going to take basis in terms of moles because all the data are given in moles. Okay, and heat of the solution is given. Heat evolved per kg of feed is crystal formed is to be calculated. So we can take a basis of 1 kg of FeSO4 7H2O is the basis. Okay, so we have a basis of 1 FeSO4, so 1 kg FeSO4 H2O, that is 1 kg of crystal. C is equal to 1 kg is our basis. Okay, now what are the other data given? All the data given has been written. Now we can proceed to solve the problem. What is the overall material balance? So now material balance part, you yourself do it because we have done it in earlier things. What is the overall material balance? Feed is entering F equal to M plus C, right? And C is given 1, right? So what do we have? F equal to 1 plus M. Okay. And what is individual material balance? What is individual material balance? Individual material balance for FeSO4. Let A is FeSO4. Then XAF into F is equal to XM into M plus XC into C. Okay. So this is our individual material balance for solute. Let me say overall material balance, individual material balance. By this time you should be thorough with it. There should be no doubt in writing the material balances. Okay, so XF into F equal to XM into M plus XC into C. You can write like XM into M plus XC because we have C equal to 1. Okay, now proceed to solve the problem. I told you to calculate the molecular weights before getting into the problem because we have to substitute this Xc value. So what is Xc? So let us go back here. Solubility data is given. From that we will get the data. Okay. What is XF? XF is feed is entering at 323 Kelvin. Then what is XF? Whatever is the amount, 40 by, we have 40 by 100 plus 48 by, what should be the denominator for mole fraction? It is mole ratio is given. 48, like if it is moles per mole, 48 moles per 100 moles of water. But what is mole fraction? It is denominator should be solute plus solvent. So it should be 48 plus 100. I'll say again, solute by solute plus solvent is mole fraction. Okay, so that way we have 48 by 148. What is the value? 48 by 148. We get 0.324. 0.324 as the value of XF. Similarly, your mother liquor is living at a temperature of 303 Kelvin. So XM is equal to, similarly we will get 32.9 divided by 100 plus 32.9, which is equal to 32.9 by 132.9 equal to 0.242. Are you getting the same value? 0.242 is the value for XM. Okay, similarly, to find XC, always remember this is common for all the problems. How to get XC? That is mole fraction of A in crystal. How to get it? It is the ratio of molecular weight of A divided by molecular weight of crystal. Okay, so what is molecular weight of A? What is molecular weight of crystal? You have to calculate. Okay, so what is the molecular weight of A? What is our A here? FeSO4, right? So first determine the molecular weight of A. So molecular weight of A, that is FeSO4 is equal to molecular weight of A is equal to 151.85, and molecular weight of the crystal is equal to, that is FeSO4 7H2O. What is that? Plus 7 times water molecular weight. 18 into 7. 126 if you add, it will become 277.85. Okay. So gram per gram mole, gram per gram mole. So if you take this ratio, we will get the Xc value. Okay, 151.85 divided by 277. This thing. Okay, so that will give us a crystal. Say for any crystal, you have to know the molecular weight of the solute and molecular weight of the crystal. You will get Xc value, that is mole fraction of solute in the crystal always will be obtained by molecular weight. So this data will not be directly given. So we have to calculate the molecular weights and substitute the molecular weights to get the value. Okay, 151.85 divided by 277.85. How much you get? 151.85 divided by 277.85 is equal to 546.51 into 10 power minus 3. That is 0.546. Okay, 5465. Let it be. Okay, I am using 4 digits. So we have Xc value also. Okay, let it be D. So substituting the values here, now we have all the data here. Okay, Xf into F equal to Xm into this. Okay. So now we have in a position to substitute the values into, what are the values? We can substitute B value, C, D, whatever equations. Okay, equations B, C, D, and your C value also known. Okay, so A into, we get only unknown parameter will be M, right? So you will get the value. No, what we will get is equation. So what is substituting the values, what you get is Xf value is 0.324 into F is equal to 0.242. 242 into m plus Xc value is 0.5465 into 1, right? So this is what we get. We can simplify this equation. 0.324 into f minus 0.242 into m is equal to 0.5465. Let it be equation number 3. But already we have one more equation, f equal to 1 plus m. Okay, f equal to 1 plus m. So from 1, so we have two equations, f and m is the two equation, two unknowns, degree of freedom is 0. You can solve it to get the answer. Okay, so how to solve it? I can do simple method. So dividing, or I can say 3 minus 0.324 times 1a. What we get? F will get cancelled. We will get the value of m. Okay, shall we do it? So this equation we already have, 0.324 f minus 0.242m equal to 0.5465. So if I am multiplying this 1a by 0.324, I will get 0.324f minus 0.324m is equal to 1 times 0.324, 0.324. Okay, so if we make subtraction here, what will happen? So this will get cancelled, and minus minus means you will get minus into minus plus actually, right? So 0.324 minus 0.242 is equal to 0.082 m. So this is plus actually, minus of minus plus, right? Equal to 0.5465 minus 0.324 equal to 0.222, which gives the value of m. So actually this you can do by any method. Okay, even in calculator, if you plug into equations, two unknowns, if you know equation mode in your calculator, you can directly get fm value also. But check if it is giving negative value or not. Okay, both should be positive. None of them can be negative. So m value is equal to 0.222 divided by 0.082, 2713. So we get m value equal to 2.713. Therefore f equal to m plus 1. So we will get 2.713. This is m plus c, right? C is 1. 2.713 plus 1, 3.713 is the f value. Okay, so that's what we have from solving these equations. We get m value and f value. Once we have f value and m value, it is easy for us to proceed to get the how much heat is liberated. Okay, so how we will write? Heat evolved during the process is asked, right? Heat evolved during the crystallization. Heat evolved during the crystallization is equal to, there are two things. One is heat liberated on cooling the feed from, that is a sensible heat, cooling the feed from 323 Kelvin 303 Kelvin. Okay, plus Heat evolved during crystallization. Heat evolved crystallization. I have already explained you the formulas, so you should be able to solve it. So how heat liberated is MCP delta T formula. It is feed is reduced, F is the feed flow rate. The temperature reduced is T23 to 303. CP value is given. CP average of the feed is given, right? You can write heat liberated. Let it be first part. Let it be second part. So this first part, that is heat liberated, equal to MCP delta T, that is F into CP average of F into delta T. What is this delta T? That is Ti minus Tp, T output. In given data itself I have written that. Okay, feed is entering at 323 Kelvin and leaving at 303 Kelvin. Is that right? Please verify. Substitute the appropriate values, because here I may be missing out because I am moving here and there and writing. Okay, so F value is we have calculated, that is 3.713 into CP value is given 2.96, delta T is 323 minus 303. So what is the value? This much kilojoules. Why kilojoules? We have to check the CP data, unit data given of CP. CP value is given kilojoule per kg Kelvin. Substitute the unit so that you don't miss it. Let me substitute the unit F, it is kg. Kilojoule per kg Kelvin into delta T is in Kelvin. So Kelvin gets cancelled, kg gets cancelled, so we get kilojoule as answer. Okay, so that is the first part answer. Use the calculator. 3.713 into 2.96 into 323 minus 303. 219.81. 219.81, almost 220 kilojoules. Okay, when you're talking about in the range of kilojoules, it can be rounded 220 kilojoules. Okay, so what about second part? Second part is heat of crystallization. The heat evolved during crystallization, that is heat of crystallization is equal to negative sign of minus of heat of crystallization is equal to minus of heat of solution. What is which solution? Mother liquor solution. Okay, so it is given that minus of 18.4 kilojoule per gram moles. Okay, kilojoule per mole is given, so we have to multiply by the moles of C. So what is the value? So how much crystal is formed? 1 kg of crystal is formed, right? So what is how much? How to convert it into gram mole? Here you have a gram mole. So what to do? 1 kg is there, right? So 1 kg. So how to convert it into gram mole? So that we have to take care of unit tally here. Okay, so data is given in kilojoule per gram mole. So what I have to substitute is, when I am multiplying by molecular weight of the crystal. What is the molecular weight of the crystal? 277.85 kg per kg mole. Okay, so if I have to consider this kg to grams, we have to multiply by 1000. Okay, because what we get is, if I am simply keeping like gram per gram mole, let me say, I'll do it in two steps to make you clearly understand. So what we get is, if you multiply by 277.85 gram per gram mole, don't confuse this here. Okay, so this gram mole will get cancelled. So this value is, let me say, minus of 18.4 divided by 277.85, 66.066, 0.066 kilojoule per grams. But how we want to express it? Kilojoules per kg, because our previous data is in kilojoule per kg. Kilojoule per 220 kilojoule we have, right? So let us write that. So this is only data we are doing, okay, only to convert it into this thing. So whatever is data given, I am dividing it to get in kilojoule per gram. When I am multiplying it, I am getting in terms of multiply by 1000 gram. 1 kg is equal to conversion factor. I am just doing conversion factor here. Where from 1000 coming into picture, don't get confused. So we are using conversion factor. 1 kg equal to 1000 grams, so that gram gets cancelled. Okay, so that is 66 kilojoule per kg is the value I have. But what is my C value? My C value is, what is my C value? C value is 1 kg, right? If you multiply by the C 1 kg, what I get is this much kilojoule. That is 66 kilojoule. So if you are using correctly, 66.22. .22 kilojoules. Okay, this is second and this is the first one. So adding these two, we get total heat liberated. Okay, total heat liberated is equal to 220 kilojoules. Understood? For heat liberated by cooling it from 320 to 303 Kelvin is 220 kilojoules, and 66.22 kilojoule is the minus actually, right? So it's the heat of crystallization. So what is the total heat liberated? Substitute now to get what is the total heat liberated. So total heat liberated is equation number this here. Heat evolved during the crystallization is equal to 1 plus 2, which is equal to, one is 220 kilojoules minus, plus actually we'll put plus but substitute with minus sign, minus 66.22. Okay. So this represent this one. It is the heat gained by the crystallization. So we'll just add it here as plus only. That symbol is to make you understand that it is lost by this and it is gained by this. Okay. So this is equal to 2, 6 plus 2, 8, 6.22 kilojoules. Okay. So this is the total heat evolved during this operation, during this crystallization operation. There are two important points we should remember when you are solving this. Okay. One is, we should know when the solubility is given, that is the data for finding out the mass fractions, xf equal to or mole fraction or mass fraction. Here we have done in terms of moles, whatever. So these are the fractions. Okay. An important another point is, heat of crystallization is equal to minus of heat of the solution multiplied by C. That is one factor you should know. So these two concepts are important while solving the problem. Other than that, you know earlier what is our material balance, right? So material balance is F equal to M plus C, that you will use. Solute balance you will make use XF into F equal to XM into M plus XC into C, right? So these are the formulas required to solve this problem. And heat evolved during the crystallization is summation of heat liberated on cooling the feed from 323 Kelvin to 303 Kelvin, and heat evolved during the crystallization. Heat liberated is feed temperature change, how much it is entering, how much it is cooled. Okay, so that way MCP delta T formula, we get what is the heat liberated born cooling, and heat evolved during the crystallization is minus of heat of the solution, so we get the values. Okay, so these two we will substitute to get what is the heat liberated. You can check whether your minus plus will come or not. Okay, now we'll proceed to solve the next problem. So just go through this problem. A Swenson-Walker crystallizer is used to crystallize sodium sulfate 10H2O crystals at the rate of 1000 kg per hour by cooling a saturated solution of sodium sulfate Na2SO4 from 313 Kelvin to 290 Kelvin. So here also temperature change is there. Feed is entering at 313 Kelvin. Therefore, mother liquor and crystal will be leaving at 290 Kelvin. Ti minus T naught is here. Okay. Cooling water enters the unit at 285. Here water is used to cool the system. So cooling water enters the unit at 285 Kelvin and leaves at 300 Kelvin. So when we have temperature data given like this, here we have to make use of LMTD. What is LMTD? Logarithmic mean temperature difference. So whether it is co-current or counter current, we have to assume. Accordingly, we have to find delta T1, delta T2, then LMTD we can be determined, right? So that's why these temperature data are given. So the four temperatures are given. Only thing you have to consider is whether it is co-current operation or counter current operation. Okay. So mostly counter current operation has some of the advantages. So that's why we will prefer to make use of counter current operation, or you can practice for both cases. What is there? So we can calculate the final answer, because it's only in final step we will be making use of this delta T, where you will finding the cross section area or overall heat transfer coefficient depending upon the required question. Okay. So the solubilities of anhydrous sodium sulfate in water are 49 parts and 59 parts of ferrous sulfate per 100 parts of, it should be sodium sulfate. Okay, Na2SO4. Okay, so 49 parts and 15 parts of Na2SO4 per 100 parts of free water at 313 Kelvin and 290 Kelvin respectively. So this 49, 15 are solubility data given. So it will help us to find out XF value and XM value. Okay. So then data given. The mean specific heat of liquor is 3.8 kilojoule per kg Kelvin. For the crystallizer, the available heat transfer area is 3 meter square per meter length, and the overall heat transfer coefficient is also given. Kilowatts, W should be capital, 0.2 kilowatts per meter square Kelvin. How many sections of the crystallizer each 3 meter long will be right? So for example, you are getting 12 meters length. How many number of pipes will be required? How many section mean number of pipes will be required? So we have to divide by this. Each pipe is 12 meter. So this is our question. Let us proceed to solve the problem. F is given or C is given. Crystals are to be formed at a rate of 1000 kg per hour. That's why people make mistake here. We should not think that 1000 kg is given, 1000 kg per hour is given, mean it is basis feed. Here crystal formation is 1000 kg per hour. Okay, so accordingly we have to write the data. Okay, let us write the basis. Our basis is C is equal to our basis is C is equal to 1000 kg per hour Na2SO4 10H2O. Okay, so I am writing this. You should know the molecular weight of Na2SO4. Please calculate and write what is the molecular weight. Then 10H2O means water, molecular weight of crystal is equal to, if this is A plus 180. What is Y 180? It is 10 times water molecular weight. This much kg per kg mole. So this will help us to proceed with the problem. Okay, so before getting into the problem, whatever is our crystal, you calculate the molecular weight of the solute A and the molecular weight of the crystal. Okay, so we have this, and let M is the mother liquor. We should not write thick liquor because we use thick liquor in case of evaporators. Okay, and C is crystals and F is your feed. Okay, these are standard notations, and given that U is equal to 0.2 kilowatts per meter square Kelvin. Okay, so this data is also given. So molecular weight you can determine. What is the molecular weight of Na2SO4? It is 142. Please cross check. So 142 plus 180 is 322. Okay, so we get 322 as the molecular weight of crystal. Molecular weight of solute Na2SO4 alone is 142. So we can find out what is XF. XF is equal to data solubility is given. Solubility is given as solubility at the feed temperature is given like 49. At the thick liquor temperature is given as 15. So we can find both XF and XM. So how to find? 49 by 49 plus 100, that is 49 by 149, this much. Okay, similarly here it is 15 by 15 plus 100, that is 15 by 115 is equal to this much. So tell me, if I calculate and tell the value of XF and XM. XF is equal to 49 divided by 149 is equal to 328.3289. 0.32885, I'm rounding to 9. Similarly, 15 divided by 115 is equal to 0.130. 0.1304. There won't be any change of these values I have calculated, but please check the molecular weight of Na2SO4 at crystal. Are you getting correctly or not? Okay. So we can even determine the XC value now. See, remember, before getting into the problem itself, we are just from the given data, we can write the things, right? So we can write 142 by 322 is equal to 142 divided by 322 is equal to 0.440. Okay. So we have XC value, we have XM value, and we have XF value. Now we can start writing the material balance and individual material balance for the solute. Okay. And it is given that C is equal to 1000. Okay, A, B, C, let it be D. Now we can write the overall material balance. What is that? F equal to mother liquor plus crystal. Okay, given any equation number earlier? No. So this is our equation number 1, and C is equal to 1000. I can write M equal to, or F equal to 1000 plus M, or F minus M equal to 1000. This is my equation number 2. Okay. Substituting condition D in 1, we get F minus, this is one equation. Remember, in all these crystallization problem, we will have a simultaneous equation in terms of two unknowns, either F and M or F and C. And solving it simultaneously, we will get both their values. Same thing we have done in previous problem. How to get another equation? We have to write the individual material balance. What we have written is overall material balance. If you write individual material balance for solute, that is xf into f is equal to xm into m plus xc into c. So all the we have xf value. What is the we have calculated the value of xf? Substitute the condition a b c d in equation 3 gives us, what is the xf value? 0.3289. 0.3289 is equal to, what is our xm value? 0.1304 plus, what is our xc value? 0.440. C is 1000. Okay, simplify it. 0.3289 f minus 0.1304 m is equal to 1440. So this is one equation and this is another equation. Okay, so what I can do, solving equation 2 and 4, we will get the values of f and m. Okay, so though if you know the shortcut, you can proceed, use the calculator to get f value. Others, you follow me. So how to solve it? So multiplying the equation 2 by this factor 0.3299, okay. So what I will do is equation 4 minus 0.3289 times second equation. Fourth equation is 0.3289 f minus 0.1304 m equal to 440. And if I multiply equation 2 by 0.3289, what I will get? 0.3289 f minus 0.3289 m equal to 0.3289 into 1000, how much? 328 point. So if you are wondering why I kept, instead of 2 minus 4, I wrote 4 minus 2 is, I can easily subtract it here, that's why. Okay, so it is minus, it is again minus, here also minus. What happens, we'll see. So this will become 0 and this becomes minus into minus plus. We have 0.3289 minus 0.1304 is equal to 0.198 plus 0.198 m equal to 440 minus 328.9. How much? 111.1. So therefore m value is equal to, I hope those who got the values from calculator can cross verify. So m value is equal to this divided by 0.198. 561. 561.11 is the value of m. So if you substitute 5 into 2 or 1, whatever it is, f equal to m plus c, m equal to 561.11 plus c is 1000, I remember. We get 1561.11 kg per hour. Okay, you consider this CS 1000 kg per hour given data. Okay, so that way we have calculated f and m now. Okay, now we will proceed to do enthalpy balance. What we have done so far is material balance. So if you proceed to get the energy balance, so what to do? You have to find out the total heat liberated. That formula you remember. Total heat liberated is equal to heat liberated by reducing the temperature of the feed from given temperature to this temperature plus heat of crystallization, right? So this is equation, and heat of crystallization is, first let us calculate this heat liberated. Let it be first, let it be second. Okay, so first part you can calculate, right? Heat liberated is equal to heat liberated to reduce the temperature of the feed, to reduce the temperature or cool feed from this temperature to this temperature. The data is given. What is the data given? It is entering at a temperature and leaving at a temperature. Refer to the question. 313 Kelvin and 290 Kelvin. Okay, so what is that? So that is our Ti, this is our T naught. So and formula for this is F into Cp of the feed into Ti minus T naught delta T, MCP delta T. Okay, M, here M is F. F value you have calculated 1561. F value is 1561.11 into Cp value is given in the question. What is the Cp value? Minus 2443 kilojoule per kg. Minus 2443 kilojoule per kg. Is it the same question we are talking about? Oh, I got that out right. Okay. What is the Cp value given? Cp value given is 3.8 kilojoule per kg. Sorry that I told 2443. It is heat of crystallization. The mean specific heat of liquor is 3.8 kilojoule per kg Kelvin. 3.8 kilojoule per kg Kelvin, and the temperature difference is 313 minus 290. Okay, so substitute the value 1561.11 into 3.8 into 23 degrees Celsius or 23 Kelvin. Okay, 1561 is kg per hour. So we get kg getting cancelled, Kelvin getting cancelled. So we get this much kilojoule per hour. Okay, so what is the value? Please use your calculator. 1561.11 into 3.8 into 23 equal to 136441. 136441.01, whatever it is. So 1,36,000 we are getting. Okay, so this is first part, 1,36,000. What about the total heat liberated and cooling is this? Okay, and what is yours? What is our value? Heat of crystallization. So what is heat of crystallization? Is equal to 2443 243 or 243? I'll check. 243 kilojoules only. Okay, 243 kilojoules per kg. Correct the question. I made a typing error. 243 kilojoule per kg. 243 kilojoule per kg multiplied by your C value. C value is 1000 kg. Okay. Heat of crystallization is equal to minus of heat of solution into C. So heat of solution is given minus 243. So minus into minus, we get plus 243 into 1000 kg per hour. Okay. So that way 243 000 kilojoules per hour. And this is our first part. This is our second part. So total heat liberated is equal to total heat liberated is equal to 1 plus 2. Already I have written the formula, you can refer. That is 243 000 plus 136 441.01. Okay, 136 441 plus 243 000. So we have 37941.01. This much kilojoules per hour. Okay, so almost 380 megajoules per hour we are getting. Okay, right, we get around 380 megajoules per hour. If it is asked separately, you can round off to right, but I am going to use the same value because we proceed to further to find out what is our heat transfer area. That's what I asked, right? To find heat transfer area, let us assume here. Let us assume counter current flow. So this is our third part of the problem to find out. So first part is finding out F and M value. Second part is finding out total heat liberated. Third part is finding the either U value, that is overall heat transfer coefficient, or heat transfer area required. Okay. So you assume a counter current flow. So if you are assuming the counter current flow, what is happening? You have a thing entering 313 Kelvin to 290 Kelvin hot fluid. What is happening with the cold fluid? It enters at 285 Kelvin and it leaves at 300 Kelvin. Check. Is it given in the question? Yeah. It enters at 313 Kelvin and leaves at 290 Kelvin hot fluid. And the cooling water enters at 285 Kelvin and leaves at 300 Kelvin. So that's what we have used. Okay. So for this, we can find out what is delta T1. What is delta T1? 313 minus 300, that is 13. Delta T2 is equal to 290 minus 285, which is 5. Okay. So we can find LMTD. What is LMTD? Delta M T logarithm mean is equal to delta T1 minus delta T2 by ln of delta T1 by delta T2 equal to 13 minus 5 by ln of 13 by 5, which is 7 by ln of 2.6. 7 divided by ln 2.6 is equal to 7.32. Is that right? Ln 2.6. So ln 2.66 ln 2.6 is equal to 0.955. 7 divided by 0.955. 7.32 only. Okay, so maximum 7.33. So this much Kelvin is what we get LMTD. So what is our heat transfer area? What is heat transfer? Q is equal to UA delta T logarithmic mean. So U is overall heat transfer coefficient. In this problem, you can find out area if Q by U delta T logarithm mean is substituted. Q value we have determined. So what is our Q value? 379,441. 379,441 divided by U value is given. What is the U value given? Refer to the question. So the overall heat transfer coefficient is 0.2 kilowatts per meter square Kelvin. 0.2 kilowatts per meter square Kelvin. 0.2 kilowatts per meter square Kelvin. So what is Q? It is kilojoules per hour into delta T is Kelvin. Kelvin, kilojoules per hour. We have what? So we have Q by U delta Tm equal to 379,441 kilojoule per hour, 0.2 kilowatt per meter square Kelvin into Kelvin. Okay, so what is watt and joule? We have to convert that to seconds, right? So that we have to take care. So how to convert it? It is joule per second, and here you have this. So you have to know that 1 hour is equal to 3600 second, right? So if you consider that 1 hour is equal to 3600 second, so we can get joule per second as watt getting cancelled. Okay, so kilojoule, it can be kilojoule per second in that case. Okay, so this will be joule per second. So whatever data, so you please calculate 379,441 divided by 0.2 divided by 3600 and divided by delta K value. What is delta TLM? 7.32. Okay, divided by 7.32 equal to around 71.99. I'm just rounding it. Around, I'm getting around 72 meter square as the area. So area, heat transfer area required is equal to heat transfer area required is equal to this much. Okay, and it is asked that what is further asked in the question. Always don't stop, go through the question once again to find out what is the extra thing asked. Okay, so we have found how many sections of the crystallizer each 3 meter long will be required. As I said earlier, each pipe will be 3 meter long. Mean how much sections will be required of the crystallizer? Each section of crystallization is 3 meter, means totally how many sections are required? Just it is like additional thing. 72 divided by 3. How much? 24. So we need 24 sections is the answer. We need 24 sections of crystallization to get this required heat transfer area. Okay. You can repeat, some questions will be that how many sections of crystallizer each 9 meters long is required. In the denominator should be 9. Okay. So that way we can solve the problems using this one. Okay. Shall we move on to the next problem? Yes, Swenson Walker crystallizer is to cool A Swenson-Walker crystallizer is to cool a 23% solution of sodium phosphate from 40 degrees Celsius to 25 degrees Celsius. During cooling, sodium phosphate
Practice
12H2O
problem.
crystals are
Those who couldn't follow, please
crystallized.
proceed.
It is desired to produce 225 kg of product per hour. That is, crystal formed is equal to 225 kg. The solubility is often the solubilities of an anhydrous sodium phosphate at 25 degrees Celsius is 15.5 parts and 15 parts of anhydrous salt per 100 parts of total water. Okay. The mean specific heat of the solution is 0.77 kilocalorie per kg degree Celsius, and the heat of the crystallization for 1 kg of the product is 35 kilocalories. The cooling water is to enter the crystallizer jacket at 50 degrees Celsius and is to leave at 20 degrees Celsius. The overall heat transfer coefficient is 120 kilocalories per meter square hours degree Celsius. What is the heat transfer area of the crystallizer? Okay, I hope you will be able to solve this problem. Okay, this is our next problem where we are having sodium phosphate being formed. Okay, so in this sodium phosphate, so it is given that it is entering at 40 degrees Celsius and leaving at, we can say, feed is so entering at 40 degrees Celsius and leaving at 25 degrees Celsius. And similarly, the cooling water is entering at 15 degrees Celsius and leaving at 20 degrees Celsius. Okay. So what is this is the feed. We are assuming it to be counter current. Okay. What is our salt here? Na3PO4 12H2O. Okay. So find the molecular weights. Molecular weight of Na3PO4. What is the molecular weight of solute A? Molecular weight of solute A is equal to 163.94, and we have 12 water present in it. So molecular weight of crystal is equal to 163.94 plus 12 into 18. How much? You get around 380.12 gram per gram mole or kg per kg mole or pounds per pound mole. Okay, so once we have this, we can easily get Xc value, right? That is the reason why we are doing it before getting into the problem. So what we have is, we are having the system where the feed is entering with a mass fraction of 0.23, and we have a crystal formation which is equal to 225 kg per hour. So this is our basis. Our basis is C equal to 225 kg per hour. Okay, so how much mother liquor is entering? Mother liquor is leaving at 25 degrees centigrade. So this also leaves at 25 degrees centigrade. Remember, this feed is getting cooled from 40 to 25 degrees Celsius. So therefore, this C also will be at 25 degrees Celsius. M also will be at 25 degrees Celsius. Okay. Now you have, we can determine the Xc value and Xm value. Okay, Xc value can be determined. What is that? Xc value is equal to molecular weight of the solute by molecular weight of the crystal. That is 163.94 divided by 380.12, which is equal to 163.94 divided by 380.12 is equal to 0.431. Are you getting the same? Check it. 0.43128. So that can be 0.4313. Okay. Similarly, Xm value can be determined. Xm value and Xf value also can be determined because those values are given. Okay. So what is that? It is given that Xm value is, it is given, it is 15.5 divided by 100 plus 15.5. How much? 15.5 by 115.5 is equal to 15.5 divided by 115.5. 1.134. 42. Okay, so these are the values we have. XM value. Similarly, can you get XF value? Or XF value is directly given 0.23. Okay, nothing to worry. So we have XF value readily given 0.23, and now we can write overall material balance and individual material balance. I am going faster because we have already done enough problems in solving this material balance, right? So here we have to focus mainly on energy balance. So what is the overall material balance? We have F equal to mother liquor press crystal formation. So crystal formed is equal to 225 kg per hour. So all this will be in kg per hour. Okay. So if we write individual material balance, we have XF into F equal to XM into M plus XC into C. So values we have just determined. It is given 0.23 into F is equal to XM. XM is 0.1342 into M plus X equal to 0.4313 into C. C value is 225. I can write simplifying. We can write 0.23F minus 0.1342M is equal to 0.4313 into 225 equal to 97.04. Okay, so let it be equation number 4. So solving this and this, we will get the values of F and M. Okay, so already I have shown in previous two problem how to simplify that. So now you should be able to do it yourself. Okay, get the F and M value. Meanwhile, I will calculate delta Tm value. So can we determine the delta Tm value here? Delta T logarithmic mean is equal to. So what is delta T1 here? Delta T1 is 40 minus 20, which is 20. Delta T2 equal to 25 minus 15, which is 10. Okay, so delta T logarithmic mean is equal to formula delta T1 minus delta T2 by ln of delta T1 by delta T2. Okay, so is equal to, so we get delta T logarithmic mean equal to 20 minus 10 by ln 20 minus by 10. So that is 10 by ln 2. 10 by ln 2. How much you get? Ln 2 is 0.69. So 10 divided by 0.69 is equal to 10 divided by 0.69 is equal to 14.49. Okay. You can say 0.6931 so that you get better value. 10 divided by 0.6931 is equal to 14.4279. Okay. So 14.428 degrees Celsius is the delta TLM. Okay. So what I asked you to do is I asked you to calculate F and M values. Okay. So what is the value of F and M? So F and M values are, you will get around 45.2. I am just giving one set of value. So you calculate whatever value you are getting. Okay. This much kg per hour. So F equal to M plus C. that is 225 plus 45.2. 270.225 kg per hour. Okay, so we get m value and h value. That is one part of answer. But how much is the mother liquor produced and what is your f value? So once we have this f value, you can find out what is q equal to fcp ti minus t output. Okay, so f value is our sorry, m value is not 45.2. We get m value is 0.096 into 45.2, which is equal to 471.5. I correct it. M value is equal to 471.1. So 471.1 is equal to F value is equal to 696.1 kg per hour. Okay, so this value will substitute here. I repeat, simplifying F and M, you will get M value equal to we get M equal to 471.1 and F equal to this value. Okay, check it, whatever value you get, that you substitute. F equal to 696.1 kg per hour into Cp value is given. What is that? 0.77 into Ti minus T naught is 40 minus 25. Okay, so what is the value? This is equal to, substitute the value 696.1 into 0.77 into 15 equal to 839, almost 840 you are getting. You will get around 840. Unit is kilocalories per hour because Cp is given in kilocalories per kg. Okay, so accordingly you will have to write the unit. If it is given in kilojoule, we have to substitute in this. Okay, so now we have these two values. We can find the heat of crystallization. Heat of crystallization is given, heat of crystallization is given as 35 kilocalorie per kg, right? 35 kilocalorie per kg. But how much C value is equal to 225. So therefore 225 kg per hour gives us kg getting cancelled. So we will get this much kilocalories per hour. How much? 35 into 225, 7875. Okay, 7875 kilocalorie per hour is the heat of crystallization for 225 kg of crystal form. Per kg of crystal form we had 35 kilocalories of heat of crystallization. Okay, so what is the total heat? Total heat liberated equal to heat of cooling, which is calculated to be 8040, and the heat of crystallization, which is 7875. So total is equal to 15,915. Okay, so this much kilocalories per hour. This is your total heat liberated. Now this is your Q value. We know that Q equal to UA delta T logarithmic mean. We have calculated delta T logarithmic mean. Only unknown parameter here is A. So A is equal to Q by U delta T M, which is equal to Q value is, let me substitute here, 15915 kilocalories per hour into, sorry, divided by U value. What is U value? U is given 120 kilocalories per hour meter square degree Celsius into delta T logarithmic. What is our delta T logarithmic mean? We have calculated that. Delta T logarithmic mean is 14.428. Okay, so if you substitute that here, 14.428 kilocalorie getting cancelled, hour getting cancelled, only left out is meter square. So you get this much meter square. What is the value? 15915 divided by 120 divided by 14.428 is equal to 9.19 meters. So almost we get 9.2 meter square as the area. Okay. So can you please repeat the problem for co-current? For co-current operation, you can repeat the problem where delta T logarithmic will be different. What is that? You will get a different value of 12.42. So you will get the area value correspondingly 10.75 meter square. Okay, you check it approximately. Okay, so what we got is 9.2 meter square when counter current operation is considered. Okay, so that is what asked in this problem, right? So there we complete our energy balance numericals on crystallization. So next we will do a numericals on distillation, energy balance in distillation. So that we will cover it in the next lecture as we have already crossed 1 hour. Okay. Thank you for joining my classroom. If you have any doubts, please contact me.